and get started. And again, if you are just joining us, first name, last name, and chapter in the chat would be awesome. If you're an advisor or an alum, if you can make note of that, that would be great as well. And officially welcome to session number 3 of Amplify DU. Hopefully everyone's having a great week. Hopefully everyone's having an awesome Wednesday. For those who are preparing to go to LI next week, like Jose, who's joining me tonight, one of our new staff members and I are, hopefully you're getting prepped and excited for that. I know on the growth team side, we're super excited getting everything ready for the recruitment symposium on Friday, and then all the programming that we have on Saturday, both as fraternity, but also within the recruitment
Hey,
training realm.
man.
So really excited to be here with you all tonight. Again, if I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you, I know we're not one-on-one meeting, but Hayden Ron, Senior Director of Fraternity Growth for DU. And then I'm joined here tonight by new staff member Jose Vasquez. He is on our chapter development team, so he's really excited to be joining and will be taking care of some of the back end pieces. He'll be monitoring the chat for any questions and making sure that if there's any issues, that he's taking care of those. So, obviously, the first two sessions really focused on two big things, our 365 philosophy when it comes to recruitment and what does that look like. And then our session last week was all about kind of debunking these myths or busting those and kind of saying, what are those 10 common things or myths that I continue to hear within the recruitment and growth space? And what's the actual truth behind them? And so for our session tonight, especially as we head into LI, especially as we head closer to August, we're going to be really focused on 10 different ways or steps that we need to start planning for recruitment and what does that actually look like? And the reason I like to do it here is we've been able to get some of those kind of foundational pieces out of the way so far within Amplify within those first two sessions. We're preparing to go into a really, really great and educational weekend in Milwaukee next week. And then we're going to jump into the end of the month in August. And so we really need to start thinking about what does our plan look like? How do we continue to refine that? If we haven't really started thinking about our plan, all right, we can make up for that and we can start thinking about what that looks like. And then this is where you all can start thinking about how do I complete that yearly recruitment plan that was sent to you all in addition to your membership health report and your IHQ recruitment goals. And so being able to really walk through how do we plan for recruitment is going to be really helpful. You'll see tonight that a lot of what, or pretty much all that I talk about, directly correlates with that recruitment plan that was sent to you all, and really kind of an effort to help you all think about how you're going to be completing that for you in your chapter. So to kick us off, we'll start with what's the first step when it comes to planning for recruitment? Well, first and foremost, we need to understand and establish and most importantly, communicate our recruitment goals. We cannot be sitting here as VPs of recruitment, as recruitment committee members, as chapters to say, hey, my recruitment goal is as many as we can get, or we just want more than last year. That really doesn't do much for us. It really doesn't allow for us to plan and be strategic in how we set those goals. And then it ultimately doesn't allow for us to be strategic in how we best communicate those goals overall. So we have to be able to establish those and communicate those goals across the board. And so if you haven't already established those goals, make sure that you're doing that within the next week, making sure that you're communicating what those are. Those goals at minimum should be what we've sent you in terms of IHQ goal expectations. But honestly, as I said in that email, we encourage you and recommend that those goals are higher as well in order to make sure that you guys are doing exactly what you need to do the best job and be the most successful in recruitment. So, what does that look like in terms of how we're going to set up our recruitment goals? And really, what I like to do is break it down into three different sections. As a chapter, we need to understand how many men we are wanting to recruit over the course of the next year. So, when we look at the entire academic year coming up, how many do we want to recruit? And that's just the first initial thing that we want to do. What's our minimum goal number? So in this case, if I'm the VP of recruitment, which I'm going to take on that persona tonight, I want to recruit 30 men over the course of the next year. That's my minimum yearly recruitment goal, right? And as you all know, within your IHQ goals, there are then stretch goals, right? But at minimum, I want to recruit 30 men. Then I need to understand what does that breakdown look like between the fall and the spring. So my goal is at minimum, I want to bring in 20 individuals or 20 men in the fall, and in the spring, I want to bring in 10. Now it's going to look different depending on the chapter, depending on the way in which you do recruitment, depending on your goals. But what that allows for me to do is, and we'll talk about benchmarking here in a little bit, what allows for me to do is understand what are then my goals for each semester, right? And then I can readjust those goals depending on how I perform, right? And so what this also does is it allows for me to communicate with my recruitment committee and my committee able to communicate with the rest of the chapter or the advisors, the alumni. This is what the chapter is going after. This is our goal, right? This is what we hope to achieve over the course of the year. This is what we hope to achieve over the course of the fall and what we hope to achieve over the course of the spring. What this also allows for us to do, again, this kind of goes into the benchmarking conversation we'll have in a little bit, is it allows for us to readjust our yearly goal throughout the year. So let's say in the fall, my recruitment goal is 20. Let's say I recruit 17, right? Well, that doesn't mean that I'm just going to say, oh, well, we can't reach that 30 goal. It means that we're going to have the conversation to say our goal is still going to be 30. We just need to make up for that in spring recruitment. Or let's say we go into the fall and we recruit 25. Awesome. We exceeded what our minimum goal was for the fall. Then we have to have the conversation of do we then want to reduce our spring number, which I do not recommend, or do we want to keep it at 10 or increase that because we're obviously doing really well in recruitment, right? Which I will always recommend and always encourage chapters to do the latter. So now my goal of 30 might turn into 35, 37 because I exceeded my fall goal, but it gives us something to work towards and it gives the chapter a clear goal to work towards as well. Again, if our planning with our recruitment goals is simply just we want to recruit more than last year, or we just want to recruit a lot of good quality men, that's not good enough because if I'm working with the recruitment committee or you're working with your chapter, Jose might think a lot of good quality men is 7 guys, and I might think a lot of good quality men is 15 guys, right? And so we're well off. And so we need to be very, very clear and very, very specific about what those goals are. And so that's step number one when you're planning recruitment. And again, if you don't have those goals yet established, you haven't discussed that with your chapter, with your alumni, or with your advisors, that needs to happen as soon as possible. That's why it's step number one, because now we can build a plan around what we want and what our goal is for the upcoming year. Next is we have to know our team, right? We talk about recruitment is more than just the vice president of recruitment. It's more than just me as an individual. It's more than just myself and the advisor I work with. It's my entire team, right? And within that, we also have to ensure that our expectations and our responsibilities are established. So it's more than just, okay, I know it's myself. I know I've got 3 other guys. I have to make sure that I've set those expectations and the responsibilities for each member. So what does that look like, right? So if we're taking our example, right? I'm the vice president of recruitment. I then have 3 recruitment chairs, right? I've got Axel, I've got Chase, I've got Nam, right? And so I know my team. I know who those individuals are. Cool. Check that box. I'm ready to go. It's the 4 of us. We're preparing, right? That's the recruitment team. We understand that recruitment is a chapter-wide effort, but the guys who are really focusing and putting that priority are us 4. Myself, Axel, Chase, and Nam. Then what I also have to understand and do is I have to provide responsibilities for each of the 4 of us, right? We can't necessarily say, okay, recruitment's the team effort. This is everything the recruitment committee does. We'll just kind of step in when we need somebody. The best practice would tell us we need to ensure that we are putting the work in within our responsibilities. It's going to hold ourselves accountable as members of the team, and it's also going to give us a lot of direction in what we should be working on a daily basis. So, for example, myself as the VP, I'm going to oversee entire recruitment strategy. Maybe I'm going to oversee the bid process. I'm going to oversee obviously the planning and the training, right? So I've given myself the opportunity to do that. And those are kind of the high level responsibilities for me, right? Then I'm going to say, hey, Axel, right? You're a huge guy on social media. You understand it. You like thinking about themes. You like thinking about posts. You like thinking about videos. Axel, I'm going to put you in charge of social media, right? So anything social media wise, anything creative, PR, marketing, like you're going to be the lead person in that. Right. Then Chase, right? Chase can manage a names list. He loves to kind of update that and be in the data and do all of those things and be our event logistics person. So anything when it comes to managing our names list, going through, hey, we need this event, we need this, the fields reserved, or we need this space on campus reserved. Chase is our go-to guy. Chase is going to make sure that happens, right? So that's his responsibility. And then last, Nam, like Nam, you're awesome at just kind of jumping in, being general support for all recruitment. So if Chase needs something from an event standpoint, if Axel needs a second set of eyes on a recruitment post, whatever the case is, Nam's going to jump in. He's going to be that general support, and Nam's going to know, hey, I'm kind of that Swiss Army knife when it comes to the team, which is awesome, and we need that, right? And so we're everyone here has a high level overview of their responsibility. Now, we also have to set the expectations of what each individual is expected to do within the recruitment team, right? So just because we have our kind of high level responsibilities doesn't mean that there are then other responsibilities and other things that we need to be doing, right? And so in this case, and again, this is just a rough outline. I encourage you all to think a lot deeper when you're thinking about your responsibilities and your expectations and who's on your team, right? Like I probably could have added, okay, who's on my team in terms of being an alumni, being an advisor, who's on my team in terms of a recruitment coach from the IHQ standpoint, maybe who's on my team when it comes to we have IFC kind of coaches, or maybe there's an FSA that you're working with. So again, this is just a high level overview, but really think kind of more in depth on what that looks like. The other piece, team expectations. So in this case, there's four different expectations, right? We have to add, the expectation is that each of us are adding a minimum of 10 to 15 minimum PNMs. I've had minimum there twice, to the names list weekly, right? So it is an expectation that every single week, the four of us are adding a minimum of 10 to 15, hopefully more PNMs to our names list in terms of guys that we could potentially reach out to. Doesn't necessarily mean that that guy is fully interested. Doesn't mean that he necessarily is going to receive a bid. It simply just means I found this guy on Instagram. I met this guy in class. I met this guy while tabling. I'm going to add him to my names list. The second one is I'm going to assign P&Ms to each of my recruitment chairs, right? And myself. And it is our expectation that you're reaching out to those assigned P&Ms based off our strategy and based off our plan on how we want to go about that, whether or not those individuals are reaching out to invite them to events, dinner, lunch, just to connect with them. You have that expectation responsibility. The third is it's an expectation as a recruitment committee member, you're present at all event and ensure that assigned brothers are also present. So what I mean by assigned brothers, you may be a recruitment team that says, hey, we're going to break up the chapter and each of you on the recruitment committee are going to be assigned 10 to 12 brothers who you are responsible to making sure that they know the information, that they're present, or they're at least communicating with you, that they have class, they have an exam, they have work, whatever the case may be, so that we can ensure that every member has been communicated to on an individual basis. And we kind of can hold everyone accountable and keep everyone accounted for throughout the recruitment process, both with the formal events and the informal events or the primary events that you might have through IFC. And then the fourth one is it's an expectation that you're attending weekly recruitment committee meetings, right? It's incredibly important that you are having these meetings. If you don't have the recruitment meeting set, that you've had these meetings set, and that each individual is prepared to provide an update on their assigned areas, right? And so if I'm going into a recruitment committee meeting every week, I'm going to make sure as the VP of recruitment that every single person provides me an update on, in Axel's case, social media, in Chase's case, the names list, in Nam's case, the different kind of pieces we asked for him to, and tasks that we've asked for him to work on over the course of the past week, and provide an update on, okay, how many P&Ms did you add to the list? Who are they? Talk to me a little bit more about them. When was the last time you reached out to your assigned P&Ms? At what level are each guy at in terms of who's at, who did we move up in terms of expressed interest? Do certain guys need bids, right? Then we're going to have some general discussion. What does this look like? Do we find any concerns or issues, right? And so this is going to hold, again, everyone accountable to their responsibilities and to their expectations. And so when you're planning as the VP of recruitment, you've got to know your team. If you already know who your team is, great. Do they know their responsibilities? Do they know their expectations? And most importantly, are we meeting weekly? In this case, it might be via Zoom. That's awesome, right? When we get back to campus, it's definitely going to need to be in person. But are we meeting weekly to go over those responsibilities, to provide updates, to make sure that we are fully prepared with our plan and to execute our strategy? And again, in a couple weeks, we'll talk about how do we best execute. And part of that is utilizing those recruitment committee meetings. So next is step three. We have to solidify our recruitment dates. That includes IFC primary recruitment, our bid or bid days, our informal events, right? So again, if we're at a place where we're saying, yeah, we're going to have recruitment, we know it's going to be in August, we know it's going to be in September, well, we got to start solidifying those dates a little bit more, right? We got to know exactly when IFC primary recruitment is. We got to exactly know when certain bid days are. When's our bid day? When's IFC bid day? What does bid day look like? right? What are certain bids or how do we extend bids? What about our informal events? And so again, this is a rough outline. This should be going a lot more in depth than your recruitment plan, but I wanted to give you all just a kind of a rough kind of view on like what you all should be thinking about. Like if I'm the chapter I'm working with, myself, Axel, Chase, and Nam need to know, okay, IFC primary recruitment is August 22nd through the 30th, right? We also probably, to go even deeper in there, is probably we need to know, okay, on the 22nd, it's the IFC Meet the Greeks event. So we know that that's going to be a tabling event. And then we're going to have chapter specific events on certain days with IFC bid day being on August 30th, right? And so we know in our minds what our responsibilities are when it comes to primary recruitment. What we also need to understand is do we have any informal recruitment events or any informal opportunities to meet with individuals? And we said, great. We know that move-in day is August 20 and 21st for students, and we're going to have barbecues on both of those days at the chapter house, or we're going to be playing football on the rec fields that day. Whatever the case is, we need to understand and have those dates solidified for a few different reasons. One, we need to make sure our members know when those dates are, right? If we're telling our members on August 18th that recruitment is on starts on August 22nd, we're going to be in for a lot of complaining, a lot of guys who are busy, they couldn't get work off, whatever the case is. So we have to set ourselves up for success. We also have to know when the informal events are so that the men know like, hey, I'm thinking about getting back to campus and moving back into my apartment on August 20th. Well, maybe you should do that on August 18th or August 19th instead, because we are having these informal barbecues. And the other piece is we have to be able to communicate with the PNMs. Hey, man, like, are you signed up for primary recruitment? Here's our recruitment events. Here's the Meet the Greeks event. Oh, and by the way, if you're moving into the dorms, we're going to have some guys helping out. So we definitely will look out for you. And we're going to have, some barbecues at the chapter house for guys. So definitely stop on by after you say bye to mom and dad, whatever the case might be. We're going to have them on two different days. You can come to both. You can come to one or the other. Bring your friends, bring your roommate, bring the guys in your hall, whatever the case is. If you start telling them that now or within the next couple weeks, they can start getting excited for getting back to campus. They have something they're going to do. We have to remember, like I was 18 once, and I didn't have fraternities reaching out to me, but it definitely would have been awesome to have fraternities saying, "Hey, Hayden, like welcome to Oregon, welcome to move in. Hey, when you say bye to mom and dad, or you got some free time, definitely stop by the chapter house. We're having this barbecue. We're doing this thing on campus, whatever the case is." I know I definitely would have at least put it on my calendar to maybe think about going. And then if I get that invite the morning of or the day before, then I'm going to remember that we talked about that back in July. Right. So we have to be able to solidify those dates, and we can't be in the realm of, oh, yeah, we're going to have something that happens around move-in day. Or, yeah, I kind of know when IFC dates are. Right. For the most part, IFCs have those dates solidified. I know that's not the case all the time, but if you don't fully know the dates, definitely try to find those or push your IFCs or your FSAs to get those dates as soon as possible. So that's step three. Step four is we have to understand and communicate PNM tracking, criteria, hotspots, etc. So we as a recruitment team, when we're thinking about planning, is we have to understand how are we tracking PNMs first and foremost. Is that through Chapter Builder? Is that through a Google Doc? Does your campus or IFC use Campus Director? Do we have another tracking system that we're using for PNM tracking? We have to make sure we understand where are our PNMs and how do we make sure that we're tracking them instead of just like, oh yeah, I've got some guys on Snapchat, I got some guys in Instagram DMs, I got some guys on my phone. Oh, and also Axel has some guys on Instagram DM and on Snapchat. And so we should be fine, right? No, that's not how a names list work. That's not how we track PNMs. A lot of guys are going to slip through the cracks, and that's not going to lead to a greater likelihood of success. So that's the first thing we have to understand. And we have to communicate that with our team, and we have to communicate that with our members to say, hey, we're adding guys to Chapter Builder. Here's what that looks like. Here's how you can add your own PNMs to Chapter Builder or your own referrals. Maybe we're using a Google Doc, whatever the case is. You and the chapter need to understand what that tracking system looks like. Second is we have to understand the criteria. What are we actually looking for in members? And this can look like a whole host of things, but this goes far beyond just the like, dude, Jose was a chill and cool guy and he gave me good vibes, right? Yeah, we want Jose and we want chill guys who are good dudes and we vibe with them and he gets along with the brothers. But we also need to have very tangible criteria pieces. We'll talk a lot about this next week at LI. I know in other Amplify sessions and recordings, we talk really in depth about membership criteria. But if you all haven't communicated or haven't established what your member criteria is, you need to start having those conversations as a recruitment team with your alumni, with your advisors, and it needs to be fairly specific, right? So, for example, if you say, hey, we want somebody who excels in the classroom, what does that actually mean? Does that mean a 3.0 GPA? Does that mean a 3.2? Does that mean a 2.75? Does that mean a 2.8? Do they just need to be eligible to join and we're okay with that? We have to establish what that actually looks like. We also, maybe another criteria piece is we want them to have leadership experience. Awesome. What does that again mean? Does leadership experience mean he was the captain of his sports team? Maybe he was on the exec of a club he was in high school or a club on campus. And then maybe another criteria piece is like he's expressed a desire for volunteer work, for service work, for community work. Maybe he's expressed a desire to serve on the exec board, right? We have these actual tangible things that we can point to. So when I go, hey, Axel, why should Jose receive a bid? Axel can go, oh, great. Axel or Jose was the captain of his soccer team in high school. He graduated with a 3.8 GPA. He loves being involved with the Big Brother program back in Houston. And he gets along with the brothers and he's super chill and he's a great guy, right? Perfect. He marks all the pieces. We know exactly what we're looking for. And what's really important is if we have our criteria pieces, our conversations become more strategic, more intentional, they become more focused, and we're not spending hours upon hours talking about guys because the criteria just had never been set. If a criteria is never set, guys are looking for different things. There's a lot of disagreement, there's a lot of argument, and it just doesn't allow for there to be kind of a unified recruitment strategy, force, and intentionality behind it. And the last piece is we have to understand our hot spots on campus. Where are those spots that we are going to find individuals? And you guys know your campus best, but some obviously big ones are the gym, the dorms, freshman quad. Maybe there's other spots on campus. Maybe you go, man, a lot of freshmen are in the business building. Maybe there's a place off campus, right? Like everyone goes to this kind of rec field, or maybe everyone goes to the student center, or whatever the case may be. After their first year, maybe it's, hey, there's this huge tabling event that happens. And so that's a hot spot for us. So we need to make sure that we're there either tabling ideally, or if we can't get a table, we're at least walking around, like talking to guys. Whatever the case is, you have to understand where those hotspots are. You have to communicate those hotspots to your chapter. And then you've got to do something about it, right? Just knowing it, and we'll talk about executing how we go about that. But we also have to do something about it. So, for example, when I was VP of recruitment at Oregon, we knew a huge hotspot where obviously the residence halls, but more importantly, the food courts and the dining halls within the residence halls. And that first weekend when everyone's moving in, they don't know where to eat, so they're just going to go straight to the residence halls, right? And so ultimately, what we did is we got together and we said that's a huge hotspot for us. We broke up into teams of about 3 to 4 guys. We wore our recruitment t-shirts and then we went out and we just started meeting as many guys as we could in the residence halls, in the dining halls, inviting them to events, getting phone numbers, and we hit those hot spots and we were able to really, be productive and intentional about where we were going because we knew where we could find a lot of guys. If you're on this call and you're a chapter that does this really well, I know a couple chapters that have really leaned into those kind of finding the hot spots, where those freshmen are, where those, guys who might be interested in joining are. Please feel free to throw that in the chat. We'd love to kind of see what different ideas and what different chapters are doing as well. So that's step number 4. Step number 5, we have to establish our budget. I think, a lot of guys say, okay, we've got recruitment. Maybe we have a budget. Maybe we don't. Maybe we get to the middle and we kind of go, oh, that was more expensive than I thought it was going to be. We have to be able to communicate with our recruitment team, with our alumni, with our advisors, and with our chapter of like, what is our recruitment budget? What do we have budget for? What is that actually going to? All of those pieces. Where are we flexible on some pieces? And I'll talk a little bit about why that's important here in a second. But for example, like at the very least, you all need to understand, and again, this is far from like the budget that I would create, but just a general idea is the first step. And then you can really get down into the weeds on like what that actually looks like, right? And so you say, okay, well, we have $400 budgeted for food, $500 budgeted for Rush t-shirts and then $200 budgeted for event supplies. Perfect, right? Like what does the $500 with the shirts actually look like? Like who's getting one? Where are they coming from? Right? We'll get into the weeds a little bit there. Is that being, subsidized by the chapter, or is everyone just getting a free shirt, right? With the food, is that food for events? Is that food for like invite only events? Maybe, your chapter is one that says, hey, we actually are going to take guys or like high priority P&Ms to lunches and dinners, and buy them meals. Does that $400, is that part of the $400, or is that a separate budget item or line item within the budget? And then event supplies, right? Like what does that actually look like? What constitute as event supplies? So again, like you as the VP of recruitment or the recruitment committee need to sit down and really understand what money we have, where that money's going towards. Is that going to be enough? Is it too much? Like you can actually do a lot with recruitment, with not a huge budget. But you also, if you have the money, like definitely, use it, but use it intentionally, use it in the right way, right? Do you have the ability to kind of add in, hey, we're actually going to do scholarships this year. And so we have a line item within recruitment for specifically scholarships for undergraduates, right? Or that's not part of our budget because the alumni are helping with those scholarships. And so we can maybe, find money elsewhere, right? And so having those conversations instead of just kind of saying, oh, I think I have a budget, I don't know how much, and then not really knowing, and then maybe going over budget or not necessarily utilizing it the way that you should. So it's really important that you've solidified what that looks like and you've established that specifically before you even step foot on campus next month, right? Within the next couple of weeks, understand the financial budget, understand the situation so that you all can start planning accordingly. All right, number six, you got to know your social media plan, right? You've got to understand your marketing plan, your social media plan, your Instagram outreach plan. You've got to understand what your posts look like, who's posting this. Like all of those pieces are important. We can't again get to like 3 days before recruitment and be like, oh, we should probably post something, right? And so again, this is just an example of what that could look like. Right. So my social media plan or my marketing plan might be like, hey, on August 1st, we're going to post like Rush DU Fall 2026. Right. We're going to have my information on it as the VP of recruitment. And then we're going to make sure that we have a referral form that they can fill out as well if they're interested. Maybe post number two is on August 10th. It's going to give all the recruitment events. It's going to list, those informal barbecues. It's going to list the primary events. It's going to list what bid day is, whatever the case may be. And then maybe post number three, the day of or day before we have those informal chapter barbecues. We're posting about it. We're tagging people. We're getting guys to repost, right? So again, this is just kind of a foundation and overview, but the social media plan should be a lot more in depth, right? It can even doesn't have to be fully recruitment focused. You could say, hey, we can have some brotherhood spotlights just so guys can get to know each other. Or like P&Ms go to the Instagram page and get to know each other. Maybe we need to make sure we have some Flag Friday posts, but definitely need to make sure that we don't neglect the social media aspect. Guys who have worked with me on the recruitment coaching side know I always talk about this. Like I need to, at the very least, make sure that a P&M, when they go to my Instagram page specifically, they know a few different things. They know one, that DU's open for recruitment. Like we're rushing, we want new guys, we want to meet you. Number two, I need to know as a P&M who to contact or how to express my interest. And so that needs to either be through a post that has the VP of recruitment or president's contact information. That needs to either be through a post or in the link in the bio type of thing, or it has kind of the information in the bio that says, hey, reach out to one of us or fill out this form or send us a DM. Whatever the case is, we have to make sure that the P&M knows that that's the case. And we're not just assuming that they're going to do that outreach themselves. And the third thing is we have to make sure that our social media looks like we actually are a chapter and we're actually doing stuff, right? If the last post, if I go on somebody's Instagram, was from 10 months ago, as a P&M, I might question, hey, are these guys still active? Do they still do stuff? Why are they not posting? Every other chapter is posting about recruitment and Rush, but they're not. So that's just going to turn me off a little bit. We have to understand that like our social media, while not necessarily going to seal the deal for, 20 guys, can definitely play a role in how P&Ms view us and the information that P&Ms are getting and how we interact with P&Ms on the digital side of things. Step number seven, and we talked about a little bit this earlier, is benchmarking. Benchmarking is huge. Any guy who provides or has a conversation with me understands I'm always asking how many guys are on your names list? How many bids have you extended? Where do you hope to be by the end of the month? I'm going to use our Kansas friends because we were just texting about this last week. After the Amplify call, they actually got three more guys to accept bids, which was awesome. I was like, Michael, Sam, this is amazing, guys, right? And what's great about that is a couple days prior, we were talking about benchmarking. We were talking about, okay, cool. How many are on your names list? Great. How many bids do you have extended? Awesome, guys. Like, we're at kind of the beginning of July. Where do you guys want to be at the end of July? And what's really awesome about us being able to have that conversation and then Michael texting me and saying, hey, we got three more guys to accept is now we're all on the same page to understand, great, how close are we to our goal in terms of end of month goal for July for us, right? And ultimately, what does that allow for us to do in terms of like readjusting or changing or being flexible with our plan if we are ahead of schedule or behind schedule, right? And so with any recruitment plan, you want to set those benchmarks so that you understand, are we making progress? Are there things that we're doing really well that we need to continue to do? Oh, are there things that are going to allow for us to take a step back, or we need to kind of take a step back and relook at it? Do we need to readjust our benchmarks? Again, if we're just saying, hey, we want 30 guys by the end of the year, but we're not taking the time to know here's our goal for every month or every 2 weeks or by this date, then we're not going to be as successful as we can be, right? So, for example, if I want 30 bids, right, by the end of the year, but I'm going to break that down into 20 by the for the fall semester. I'm going to say, okay, by the first day of fall, first day of class in August, I want 15 bids extended and 7 bids accepted at minimum, right? Then by the start of IFC primary recruitment, let's just say, hey, IFC primary recruitment doesn't start until 2 weeks after the semester. Great. Within those 2 weeks, I want to make sure that in total I have 25 bids extended and then I have 10 bids accepted, right? So what that means is by the time I go into IFC primary recruitment, I've got half my, minimum goal already there, right? And then by the end of IFC primary recruitment, I want to make sure that I've extended 45 bids and I've got 20 bids accepted at minimum, right? So again, it allows for us to set those benchmarks. And so if I go, hey, by the first day of fall, I've only extended 8 bids and I only have 3 bids accepted, that tells me I've got a lot of work and a lot of catch up I've got to do, right? Or I've got to make sure I'm readjusting what we're doing there. Or if by the end of IFC primary recruitment, we, only extended 32 bids and we only have, 13 guys accepted, that tells us, cool, great. Like we now need to put in a lot of work to prep for the spring and or do our COB process and continue to recruit over the course of the next few weeks. So again, the benchmarking is incredibly important and it's something that you all should make sure that you're doing within your recruitment plan. Obviously, in the plan that you'll submit to us, there's a whole benchmarking section. So I've provided you kind of the benchmark kind of dates, and then you're all will go in there and provide where do you want you to be as a chapter to make sure that you are setting yourselves up for success there. Couple more. Step number 8, we have to set your chapter-wide recruitment training session. Again, we'll talk more in 2 weeks about what it means to actually train your members for recruitment, but we need to make sure that we are setting up some sort of chapter-wide recruitment training session. Now, I will say you have the option of doing this in a few different ways. You can do it through yourself, like you as the VP and the committee can provide that training. I don't think it can't be, or what I would not recommend is it be anywhere less than 30 minutes. Like you guys have to go in depth talking about your plan, talking about your goals, talking about best practices, strategy, all of the things that are going to set you all up for success. So you can facilitate that. You can work with an alumni or an advisor to say, hey, would you be willing to come into town? Or can you stop by the chapter house on this Sunday? Or can you join via Zoom to do a chapter wide recruitment training session for us, or reach out to our team. Shoot me an email, ron@deltu.org. I've done plenty of chapter wide recruitment training sessions for groups where we're able to go on for 30 to 45 minutes. really hone in on certain things that the chapter needs the most help with, and then talk about that plan and strategy and work through that with them. So different options there. If you want us to kind of work with you on that, please reach out. And either myself or a member of my team, happy to set that up via Zoom and make sure you're getting that right. Some of you are going through Cody Rother on our educational programs team to get a recruitment training, kind of building better men retreat. Awesome. That's another option. But definitely make sure that you've set that up. What essentially that looks like is you need to understand like what's the date, what's the time, where is it at, and you need to communicate with that with chapter members well before, right? So if I have one, let's just say, ours is going to be Sunday, August 16th. It's going to be at 5 p.m. It's going to be at the chapter house, or if you have to join via Zoom, we'll make sure we have that option. I need to make sure, I mean, it's July 15th. I should probably communicate that today or tomorrow. So give everyone a month's notice. Say everyone, hey, it's an expectation and it's mandatory to attend. Please reach out to me or a recruitment committee member if you do have kind of conflicts or issues, and let's talk about what that looks like, right? Because understand, like if I'm a 60-man chapter, that might be a little bit difficult to get all 60 guys, especially a few days before the semester, right? But that's why we're going to have that Zoom option. Maybe it's not as difficult, but you all need to make sure you're communicating that. And again, if I'm saying, hey, on August 13th, hey guys, by the way, we have a training session on Sunday. Yeah, that's probably not going to be something that's going to get as many guys as possible. And I'm going to probably have a lot of complaints, rightfully so, because it's 3 days before when I've known for the last month when it's going to be. So I need to communicate that. And again, your chapter wide training session should be no shorter, minimum 30 minutes, right? So no shorter than 30 minutes. You all can just, go through your plan, kind of questions to ask, recruitment 101 for the chapter. You can do some like engaging sessions. Hey, how do I talk to a P&M? Do some role play if you think your chapter needs that. Or if you just, again, need help kind of thinking about how we go through or about the session, reach out to your advisor, reach out to your alumni, reach out to us. We'd be happy to help either facilitate that or at least provide you guidance there. Number nine is confirm information that needs to be shared with P&Ms. This includes dues, associate member education, housing, anything else that a P&M needs to know before they accept their bid so that we can retain them from the time that they accept their bid all the way through initiation and retain them because we should be retaining them, right? There's reasons why guys don't get retained, totally get that, but let's not make the reason, hey, I didn't know the information going into it. I'm now just learning about it. I hear that too often, and it always frustrates me with it when somebody goes, I didn't know I had to pay that much, right? Or I didn't know AME was 7 weeks, or I didn't know I had to live in the chapter house for a year or 2 years, whatever the case may be. And so you guys should always be talking through, here are the dues per semester, here's how much it costs, here's the breakdown of that. If you have questions, please talk to us. Please make sure if you want to be put on a payment plan, if you need scholarship help, we might be able to provide that through the alumni. Here's that process. Whatever the case may be, you all need to make sure you're communicating with potential new members what the dues are, because ultimately they're going to find out. And if the dues are going to be the reason they don't join, which sometimes their finances are that reason, you need to know that in August rather than 2 days before initiation. And most of us on this call have all experienced that, where a P&M goes, I was never told about the dues. Initiation is on Saturday. I actually can't pay the dues. And so I'm going to need to drop, right? And that's just such a momentum killer and such a bummer for chapters when that happens. Same thing with AME. Hey, our process it's 8 weeks. It starts on September 1st. It's going to be an hour per week or whatever the case might look like. For some universities, it has to be 4 weeks. For some, it's 6 weeks, right? And so you just need to make sure you're communicating what is the education process, when does it start, what's the expectation per week, when is it going to be held, and then ultimately, obviously, that the ending of that is going to be initiation. And so they then can start saying, great, I know I'm going to get initiated in November, in October, in December, whatever the case is, so they can start planning for that and communicating it. And then if you have a chapter house, right, what's the live-in requirement? How much is it going to be? What does that look like? When do housing contracts come out? When if I have questions about housing, who do I contact, right? There's been chapters I work with who, they know there's a live-in requirement and they don't fully know how to communicate it or what that looks like, or they don't, they get questions and they kind of don't know who to get the P&M in contact with. So you all need to make sure you are understanding that information, that so you can share that with P&Ms, because again, You want to make sure you are addressing concerns. This goes back to last week. You are addressing concerns and barriers for potential joining up front rather than right before initiation or midway through the associate member education process, or even I've seen for some chapters, individual gets initiated, he didn't fully understand the live-in requirement. He's a great member, but he doesn't want to live in the chapter house. And then he drops in the spring semester, right? Which is the worst. It's the worst. But if we would have had that conversation at the beginning of August or during primary recruitment, we probably could have saved ourselves a huge headache down the line, or at least prepped him to say, okay, here's what that's going to look like. Let's go through the questions. What questions do you have? Your parents have. You all understand what I'm trying to say there. So make sure you have that information. It's clear. I think just from a training your members standpoint, real quick, make sure that the members know here's the information, or if a P&M asks about dues, the member ed process, housing, whatever the case is, they refer them to the president, they refer them to the VP of Finance, VP of Member Ed, that the members know who to tell the P&M to talk to or get connected with so they can get those questions answered. And then the last thing is understand and communicate your bid process. I think it's really important for chapters to understand like how do we provide bids? What does this look like? Is our process actually smart? Is it taking up too much time? Are we not spending enough time on it? Who's providing the bid? Again, what does all that look like? When can we extend bids? This goes back to last week, right? Do we actually have to extend bids on bid day through IFC primary recruitment, or can we extend them before? If we can do it before, what does that look like? So, for example, four-step process. When I was an undergrad, this is more or less what our bid process looked like, right? So we'd have this P&M, we'd engage with them. The recruitment committee would come together on our weekly meetings, or sometimes even more than that once the semester started, and we'd recommend a P&M for bidding, right? We would say, okay, we all agree that this individual or this group of individuals should all receive a bid from DU, right? Myself, then as the VP of recruitment, would go to the exec board in a group chat, or maybe we had an exec board meeting that night, whatever the case is, and we'd say, hey, we'd like to give bids to these individuals. The exec board would then essentially confirm that or provide any objections. Then myself as the VP would send the list out on our chapter group me, and we would say, okay, you have 24 hours to state any objections. Is there any reason why any of these guys could potentially not be a good fit or shouldn't receive a bid? If you do, reach out to me directly. And we would then obviously hear. So there were a couple cases where it's like, yep, I have some information, or there was a conversation about something that I didn't tell you about or that I was subject to or whatever the case may be. Other times it was like, hey, I just didn't get to meet the guy. And it's like, well, you didn't show up to the recruitment event. So, obviously you didn't get to meet the guy. So that's a little bit different. If there are no objections, then the recruitment committee would extend that bid. We would decide who on the committee or who in the chapter was the best person to extend that bid. Now, I know that if your campus might say, hey, we have to do it all on bid day, you submit your bids. Okay, that's fine, right? But you just have to understand your process, understand what that looks like. What this really did is it helped our chapter understand, cool, like we know what that process looks like. We know that when we receive the list of guys that we want to bid, that we need to make sure that we are communicating if we do have any objections, and we're doing that within a timely manner. And then that allowed for the recruitment committee to then say, great, like who's the best person? What does the follow-up look like? And how do we make sure that this is a really unique and special process when it comes to extending that bid there? And so with that being said, want to see if there are any questions. So again, those kind of the 10 steps planning. If again, you go to the yearly recruitment plan document that you all received via email, that's essentially I took from the document. So you should be able to work through this. But do want to see if there are any questions. So feel free to throw those in the chat. Or if you're able to come off mute, and happy to answer those for you. All right. So seeing none or hearing none, once again, as always, thank you for your time on Wednesday night. Really appreciate it. If you have any questions or want to set up a recruitment training session for August or September, or want to talk through your recruitment plan even more, feel free to shoot me an email, give me a call, shoot me a text. As a reminder, your yearly recruitment plans are due in early August. So I'll send a reminder out post LI, but start working on those. You can submit those earlier if you want. Not a huge deal. You don't need to wait until the day of. I think it's that first Friday in August is that deadline there. But feel free, if you already have your recruitment plan, you're ready to submit it, please feel free to shoot those over to me via email. It is an expectation that every chapter submits theirs, but please make sure that you submit those. And if you have any questions, just let me know. Again, always happy to set up a call or connect with folks. So thank you again. Have a good rest of your night. And for those who I'm going to see next week, excited to see you all in Milwaukee.